For thousands of years, humanity believed its past was already written. The story seemed complete. Ancient people crossed continents. Civilizations rose from the dust. Kingdoms expanded. Empires collapsed. And generation after generation inherited the world that came before. History appeared settled. The questions had answers. The mysteries had explanations. Then a handful of ancient bones changed everything. Not gold, not lost documents, not forgotten ruins. Bones, fragments of human remains buried beneath caves, deserts, forests, and mountains. Silent witnesses from another age. For centuries they had remained hidden, ignored, forgotten, waiting. Then technology finally caught up. Scientists discovered a way to extract tiny traces of DNA from ancient skeletons. The process was difficult. Most ancient DNA had already been destroyed by time, heat, moisture, bacteria, thousands of years of decay. Yet sometimes, against impossible odds, fragments survived. Tiny biological messages from people who lived long before recorded history. Researchers believed these genetic clues would confirm everything historians already knew. Instead, they uncovered something far stranger. The first samples looked normal. The results matched expectations. Migration routes appeared correct. Timelines seemed accurate. Everything made sense. Then one sample didn't. A skeleton buried in one region carried ancestry connected to people who supposedly lived thousands of kilometers away. The finding was dismissed. Ancient DNA research was still new. Mistakes happened. Contamination happened. Equipment failed. Nobody panicked. Then another anomaly appeared. Then another soon. Laboratories across the world were reporting similar surprises. Different countries, different researchers, different DNA samples. The same problem. The ancient world wasn't behaving the way history books said it should. What they found shocked everyone. Because the deeper scientists looked, the less predictable human history became. Ancient populations appeared where they shouldn't exist. Unexpected genetic connections crossed mountains, deserts, and oceans. Groups believed to be isolated turned out to be connected. Groups believed to be connected turned out to be surprisingly different. Every answer created two new questions, and that was only the beginning. By the early 21st century, a genetic revolution was underway. New technologies allowed researchers to study DNA faster than ever before. Samples arrived from every corner of the world. Ancient burial grounds, gem caves, lost settlements, forgotten tombs. Each sample represented a human life, a person who once laughed, worked, dreamed, loved, and eventually disappeared into history. Yet part of them remained, he inside their DNA. As the number of samples increased, scientists began noticing patterns, strange patterns, parts nobody expected. A genetic signature found in one country appeared thousands of kilometers away. Ancient populations shared ancestry despite having no obvious historical connection. Some genetic lineages seemed to vanish entirely. Others survived for thousands of years. Invisible threads connected people across enormous distances. It was as if humanity's family tree had been drawn incorrectly. Not slightly, completely. The discoveries forced researchers to ask uncomfortable questions. What if the accepted story was incomplete? What if entire chapters of human history had been forgotten? What if some population disappeared without leaving any trace except DNA? And perhaps most importantly, how many unknown ancestors were still hiding inside modern people? Nobody knew. The only way to find out was to go bigger, much bigger. Scientists launched projects involving ancient and modern DNA from around the world. Thousands of samples became tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Researchers compared ancient genomes with living populations from more than 100 countries. The goal was ambitious: build the most complete genetic map of humanity ever created. No one expected what came next, because once the comparisons began, a disturbing pattern emerged. Modern populations often carried ancestry from people historians had never identified. Ghost populations. Not ghosts in the supernatural sense, ghosts in the scientific sense, people who left genetic descendants, but almost no archaeological evidence, people who once existed, then vanished. Leaving only fragments of themselves behind, scientists could see their fingerprints, but not their faces, their presence, but not their names. Imagine discovering footprints in fresh snow. You know someone was there. You can follow the trail. But the person is gone. That was the situation researchers faced again and again. Unknown ancestors appeared inside genetic data. Invisible populations hidden inside modern DNA, and every new discovery made the mystery deeper. One study suggested ancient migrations historians never predicted. Another suggested multiple waves of movement across continents. Another revealed unexpected connections between populations separated by vast distances. The traditional picture of human history began to crack. Then it began to break. Entire regions needed to be reconsidered. Ancient Europe, ancient Asia, ancient Africa, the Americas. Everywhere scientists looked, the story became more complicated. The old narrative had straight lines. The new narrative looked like a tangled web. People moved, mixed, separated, returned, disappeared, reappeared. Humanity's past was not a simple journey. It was a maze, and researchers had only just entered it. Meanwhile, outside the scientific community, most people remained unaware of what was happening. History books changed slowly. Public understanding changed even slower. But inside laboratories, a quiet revolution was underway. Every year brought new surprises. Every year brought new questions. And every year, the mystery grew larger. Because one fact became impossible to ignore. The world we inherited was built by far more people than historians once believed. Some left monuments, some left cities, some left written records. Others left nothing except DNA. And those forgotten ancestors were beginning to speak, not through language, not through stories, but through genetic code, a message carried across thousands of years. A message hidden inside billions of living people. A message nobody fully understood, yet, and that question, who were these forgotten ancestors, has never been fully answered. For decades, scientists searched for ancestors they could see. Ancestors with names, ancestors with graves, ancestors with histories. But the greatest discovery involved ancestors nobody could find. People who seemed to exist only in DNA. At first, the evidence appeared insignificant, a strange genetic signal, a pattern that didn't fit, a population that seemed impossible. Researchers assumed mistakes. Laboratory contamination, statistical errors, faulty conclusions, yet the signal refused to disappear. Every new study revealed the same mystery. Every new genome pointed toward the same conclusion. Someone was missing, not one person, entire populations, people who helped shape the modern world, people whose descendants still lived, yet whose identities had vanished from history. This is where the story becomes unsettling. Imagine discovering a photograph of your family, footprints, grandparents, great-grandparents, then noticing another face. A face nobody recognizes, no name, no records, no memory, yet genetic testing proves that person is your ancestor. That was exactly what researchers encountered, again and again, across continents, across thousands of years. The DNA kept pointing toward forgotten people. People who should have left evidence, people who should have left evidence, people who should have appeared in archaeology, people who should have been remembered, yet they weren't. History had lost them, DNA had not. The first major clues emerged when scientists compared ancient genomes from different regions. At first, the results appeared normal. Known populations produced expected patterns, migration routes aligned with archaeology, timelines seemed accurate, then anomalies appeared, small at first, almost invisible. A percentage here. A percentage there, genetics signatures with no obvious source. Researchers searched existing databases. Nothing matched. They searched ancient samples. Nothing matched. The ancestry existed. The population did not, or at least it had not been discovered yet. No one expected what came next. As the number of ancient genomes increased, the mystery grew larger, not smaller. Instead of one ghost population, scientists found several, then more, each hidden behind the genetic record, each influencing later populations, each leaving descendants. Yet, leaving almost no direct evidence of their existence, it was as though entire chapters of humanity's story had been torn from the book. The pages were gone. Only scattered sentences remained. Those sentences were written in DNA, and scientists were learning how to read them. The pages were gone. Only scattered sentences remained. Those sentences were written in DNA, and scientists were learning how to read them. The challenge was enormous. DNA does not tell stories the way books do. It does not explain motives. It does not describe battles. It does not record names. Instead, it leaves clues, tiny clues, fragments of a much larger picture. Researchers had to reconstruct entire populations using nothing more than genetic traces. It was like trying to rebuild a lost city from a handful of stones. Sometimes the evidence was clear. Most of the time it wasn't. Yet the deeper scientists looked, the more confident they became. The ghost populations were real. They had existed. They had lived. They had families. They had children. And those children had of descendants, millions of descendants, living all around the world today. One of the most surprising discoveries involved scale. Researchers initially assumed these forgotten populations would have been small, minor groups, tiny communities, perhaps isolated tribes. The DNA suggested otherwise. Some ghost populations had contributed ancestry to vast numbers of people. Their influence stretched across enormous regions. Their genetic legacy survived for thousands of years. Yet their names were gone. Imagine an empire influencing millions of lives. Then imagine that empire disappearing so completely that nobody remembered it existed. That was the mystery scientists faced. Again and again, the evidence continued to grow. Ancient burial sites revealed unexpected ancestry. Rammed caves produced surprising results. Skeletons recovered from distant locations carried genetic signatures linked to populations nobody had identified. Every discovery strengthened the case. Every discovery deepened the mystery. And that mystery became even more complicated when researchers began examining ancient migration routes. For decades, many historians viewed migration as a series of separate events. One group moves. Another group arrives later. A simple sequence, the DNA painted a different picture. Multiple migrations often happened simultaneously. Different populations traveled through the same regions. Some settled. Others continued moving. Some disappeared, others expanded. The result was a complex network of ancestry stretching across thousands of years. Human history resembled a river system. Countless streams flowing together, separating, rejoining, changing direction, creating something larger than any single journey. This realization transformed the way scientists understood the ancient world. The past was not static, it was dynamic, constantly changing, constantly evolving, constantly creating new connections, and those connections often appeared in the most unexpected places. Researchers occasionally found genetic relationships between populations separated by enormous distances, canons nobody predicted, canons invisible to traditional archaeology. At first, such discoveries seemed impossible, but as more genomes were analyzed, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Ancient people traveled far more than historians once believed, not everyone, not constantly, but enough to leave lasting traces, enough to connect distant populations, enough to reshape the future, enough to reshape future. What they found shocked everyone, because the ancient world was not isolated, it was connected. Far more connected than anyone imagined. trade routes carried more than goods. They carried people, Idiaspa families, entire bloodlines. A traveler arriving in a new region could introduce genetic lineages that survived for thousands of years. A single family could influence future generations in ways nobody could predict. History often focuses on kings, generals, empires. DNA revealed the importance of ordinary people, the farmer who moved, the hunter who traveled, the merchant who settled in a distant land. The family that crossed a mountain range searching for survival, their names vanished, their influence remained. Generation after generation, century after century, millennium after millennium. And perhaps that is the most remarkable lesson hidden inside the genetic record. Human history was not shaped only by famous figures. It was shaped by countless ordinary lives, lives history forgot. Lives DNA remembered. As researchers pushed deeper into the past, another mystery emerged. Some genetic signatures were incredibly ancient, far older than expected, older than known civilizations. Older than cities, older than agriculture, these lineages connected modern populations to people who lived in worlds completely different from our own. Worlds of hunters, gatherers, ice ages, massive migrations, and environmental challenges almost impossible to imagine today. Yet through all of those changes, fragments of their DNA survived, carried forward by descendants, protected by chance. Preserved across unimaginable spans of time, the realization was humbling. Every person alive today carries pieces of countless ancestors, not dozens, not 100,000s. Many of whom will never be identified, many of whom left no written record, many of whom disappeared into history long ago. Yet part of them remains, living quietly within the present. And somewhere among those forgotten ancestors, the next great mystery is still waiting to be discovered. And somewhere among those forgotten ancestors, the next great mystery is still waiting to be discovered, because every answer seemed to create another question. Every breakthrough exposed another gap in the story. Scientists solve one puzzle, then immediately encounter another. That pattern repeated for years. A discovery would make headlines, researchers would celebrate, the mystery appeared solved, then new evidence arrived. And everything changed again. One ancient genome would reveal an unexpected migration. Another would reveal a forgotten population. A third would connect regions nobody thought were connected. The puzzle kept expanding, almost as if human history was resisting every attempt to simplify it. The deeper researchers explored, the more they realized something important. The past does not fit neatly into categories. History books often divide humanity into separate chapters, separate peoples, separate regions, separate stories. The DNA ignored those boundaries. Ancient populations interacted constantly, sometimes peacefully, sometimes violently, sometimes through trade, sometimes through migration. But interaction was everywhere. No region remained untouched forever. No population remained completely isolated forever. The evidence was overwhelming. And perhaps that was the most surprising revelation of all. Humanity's greatest story was not division. It was connection, a connection stretching across continents, across cultures, across thousands of years. Researchers began creating increasingly detailed genetic maps. The goal was ambitious: trace the movement of populations through time, follow ancient ancestry from one generation to the next. Reconstruct journeys that happened long before written records existed. The results were astonishing. Migration routes appeared where historians never expected them. Ancient populations revealed hidden relationships. Entire chapters of human movement emerged from the data. Some discoveries confirmed existing theories. Others destroyed them completely. Yet one mystery remained at the center of everything: the ghost populations, the forgotten ancestors, the people whose existence could only be detected through DNA. Scientists could estimate when they lived. They could estimate where they lived, They could measure their genetic influence, but they still could not see them clearly. Imagine standing in a dark room. You can hear footsteps, you can hear voices. You know someone is there, yet you cannot see them. That was the situation. The evidence was undeniable. The picture remained incomplete, and perhaps it always will. Because not every ancient population left recoverable remains, not every settlement survived, not every story can be reconstructed. Time destroys evidence. Weather destroys evidence. Nature destroys evidence. Sometimes all that survives is a tiny fragment, a tooth, a bone, a strand of DNA, and from those fragments, scientists attempt to rebuild entire worlds, worlds that vanished thousands of years ago. Worlds whose people never imagined they would one day be studied, yet those forgotten people continue shaping the present. Every modern population carries traces of countless ancient journeys. Every family tree stretches back into mysteries nobody can fully solve. Every person alive today is connected to ancestors whose names will never be known. That realization changes the way we think about history. Because history is not just the story of kings and empires, it is the story of ordinary people. People who crossed rivers, people who crossed mountains, people who survived droughts, people who escaped disasters, people who searched for a better future. Those choices shaped humanity. Those journeys shaped humanity. Those forgotten lives shaped humanity. And their legacy remains visible. Not in monuments, not in statues, not in written records, but in DNA, the oldest archive on Earth. An archive carried by every human being. An archive still revealing secrets. An archive still rewriting history. And perhaps the most remarkable discovery is this: the story is nowhere near complete. Thousands of ancient remains remain untested. Thousands of archaeological sites remain unexplored. Entire regions still hold secrets beneath the ground. Future discoveries will change what we believe. Future discoveries will reveal new ancestors. Future discoveries will uncover new migrations. Future discoveries will expose new mysteries, because the deeper scientists look, the larger the story has come. And somewhere, beneath layers of stone and soil, another forgotten chapter waits in silence, waiting for the moment when someone uncovers it, waiting for the moment when the past speaks again. Waiting for the moment when history changes once more, because it always does. And that question, how many forgotten ancestors still live within us today, has never been fully answered.